All right, I think we will get underway. All right. So the first thing about an unconference is if you hold up your hand, that means everybody be quiet. It's a really cool principle, actually.
Kindergarten trick, that one.
It works. It's really good. So kia ora koto ko Stephen toku ingoa no o tatahi ao. It's a real pleasure to welcome you here. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I have to start with a confession. So I have children, and as I watch them grow, I realize I have less control over their lives. And they go off to preschool, and then they go off to primary school, and then they go off to other things. And in a way, I feel like that about this unconference, because you have to remember that for me, it's been like a child for quite a while in my head and planning it. So I am ready to release it. And I am looking forward to the diversity of opinion and thoughts. But equally, I'll have some thoughts as well, because I'll have thought about things for a long time. So just bear with me. And my role, I really view as being a catalyst or a facilitator here. This isn't going to be a top-down heavy thing, but if I can help to coordinate and facilitate, then that's really my aim. So I think I know most of you, but what I'd love to do is just have really brief intros, because if each of you is amazing, and we could easily be here a couple hours hearing everyone's full stories. But I would love to hear, just so everyone can know who the other people are, really just your name, and if you're representing an organization, sort of what that organization is, and then also what potentially you could bring to the table, or what's an area that you have a passion for. And I sent that agenda out earlier with some ideas, which are all flexible, but there may be something that you're naturally drawn to as well. So it'd be cool just to hear about that. That would be good. I also should say, you don't have to participate beyond this meeting. So if you don't want to, that's completely fine as well, because we each are going to have different roles, and some people here may just come to the event, and others may be more involved. But could we start with you, Natasha, and just go around? And like I say, I know what could happen is it could be 3 minutes each, and we would be here a very long time, but just keep it brief, and we'll get to know each other as we go.
Okay.
So.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha.
So if it's okay, I've handed around this agenda. This is just the same thing that I emailed out. And I thought we could just run through the work streams, but before we do that, I know some of you haven't been to an unconference, so some of you are probably going, well, I'm kind of here and curious, but tell me a little bit more. So what I thought I'd do is just outline that really briefly, and then if you've got questions, maybe ask them, and then we can move on to the other parts. But from my perspective, and other people will have their views because they'll have been to unconferences, but I love the unstructuredness of an unconference. It's like it flips the script, because normally a conference is like, well, here's the keynote speaker, and they're speaking at 9:15, and then we're having this panel discussion, and they're going to talk about this topic. And so I'm organizing a conference at Te Papa next year in May, and we've got the people lined up. We've asked them, it's the structure's there, I know what's happening at 2:45 on Friday the 1st of May 2020 in this room, so it's all very programmed, whereas an unconference takes the beauty of conferences, which is bringing people together, and then hands the keys over to the people who are actually coming to the conference and says, what's your topic? What's your specialty? So we don't, it's a point of discussion, but we don't necessarily line up very much in the sense of what the topics are actually going to be. And on the day or the night before, you actually go around and you get ideas from the people who are there. So it's in a way to democratize a conference, because it might be you that's presenting, or it might be you, it might be me. And so it depends on, in a way, the mood of the whole group as to what gets chosen. And that means there's huge diversity as well, because you haven't pre-programmed it, and it can be flexible. And if something happened that week that's really big news, you can talk about that, rather than it's all pre-programmed and arranged. So I think it gives a lot of a really interesting approach that I'd like us to explore here in Christchurch. As a city which has gone through so much, it's a format that could actually be used to bring us together. So the structure that I've sort of been thinking through in my mind, and again I'm happy to release this as a point, is the ideas of collaboration, and we're all in it together. E waka e ke noa, we're all in the same boat. I think that would be a nice thing as an overarching theme, and then but not really programming too much else. The other thing is that sometimes Unconferences go for several days, so they might start on a Friday and finish on a Sunday, but I'm not proposing, at least not for the first one, that we do that, because that is quite a lot more work. What I've been thinking of is that it would be starting on a Friday evening, so gathering everybody together and having this discussion about what the topics are going to be, and probably having some food, or saying whoever wants to can go out to eat. And then the next day, having the Saturday, a full day of the conference, but not having it on Sunday. So it's kind of it's not like it's a 3-day event. It's going to be like an evening event and a day long. And I think that simplifies the logistics, because we don't have to worry about accommodation for people. We don't have to, people can come and either you make it or you don't. We're not going to be saying, bring your sleeping bag and have you got a pillow and, so it's getting rid of a lot of those issues, which I think simple is quite good. And the other thing is that the downside of Unconferences is, in my experience, I've been to a couple of them, is that they can descend into sort of discussions about what's your favorite type of dog, or just kind of pretty random. So I do think it needs some curation, and that's where we as a collective group can help to make sure that, people are actually on track, not in a heavy-handed way, but in a, guided way. So one idea I've had, and I put it on the website, is to have some containers that are preset, so that we are dividing ideas up into topics, so that there's like a tech stream, and there's a business stream, and an environment stream, and a community stream, or something like that. But I definitely am now willing to give up those ideas if we collectively think that's not good. This is where it's going to adapt and change. But that's sort of how an unconference works. And then the other big thing to say is at the end of the unconference, it can be a letdown because you've had these amazing discussions and then there's no follow-up. There's no sort of, well, what are we going to do about it? We had an hour-long discussion about climate change and came up with some great ideas, and then that's it. So I'd like to brainstorm and think through, how do we take the impact of what we do and try to catalyze it for, going forward, whether that's helping people to set up committees or groups or something to keep the conversations going, or trying to have a final part of the unconference where we write things down, or some way to make sure that it's not just a pat ourselves on the back and that was great and now we're off, we'll forget about it by Monday, So that's just really, those are all high-level concepts. It's just, I know many of you have never been to an unconference, so I'm just trying to give a glimpse into it. The other thing is they're really great for community because you're all in it together. You're rubbing shoulders with people, and it really does democratize everything. Everyone's there, and potentially you're a speaker. You might be a speaker. I might be a speaker. We're all helping each other. So so that's sort of how it runs. The other thing, I should have said this as well, is it's not about making money. So you try to, well, my view, maybe we will all disagree, but my view is we're not at the end of it going to go, wow, that turned a profit, because I've been to many conferences from big organizations, and you just look at the numbers involved and think, man, that spun some money for somebody. It's $1,000 a day, it's a lot. So I think that's not the intention here, certainly not for me. We'll talk through some of the logistics, because we will have food, there will be lunch, there will be things we need to pay for. But the intention isn't to suck out as many dollars as we can from the participants. And I think that comes through in the vibe of everything that we do. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Or if you've been to an Unconference, anything that I missed out? And in particular, I'm looking at you, Jess, having done many of these.
What did you get out predominantly from the Unconferences that you...
The ones that I've been to, it's been mainly about the people that I met. And then I honestly don't remember all the conversations from the days, but the connections that I made then result in ongoing dialogue and discussion. And some of you have been to some lunches I've been organizing for the last year and a half called Impact Lunches. And the purpose of those is to break down silos and to get people talking. So an accountant talking to a scientist, talking to a psychologist, and so the conference does that as well. It breaks down the barriers across, name any possible barrier from age to culture to, country of origin, whatever it is. If we're all having food together, we're talking together, we're listening to the same speakers, it does break down lots of barriers. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd support that too, actually, Stephen. The ones that I've been to, the value of them is extended well beyond the event itself. And the connections that have been made around particular ideas or barriers that people are passionate about breaking down, that's gotten really diverse groups together to trial solutions. And yeah, I think for me that's been the greatest point of value, is when I've connected with people from really diverse places that I wouldn't normally have connected with in my day-to-day work.
Yeah.
And we've been able to, in our own spaces, to be able to trial things collaboratively to make change.
And I think the other thing is that this group, if we agree to work together, the networks and connections that we'll make with each other as we plan the thing, that's valuable as well. It's always that way, isn't it? Whoever's planning it gets as much out of it as the participant, or probably more than the participants. So potentially, if you're involved, you'll get to know some of the people around this room really well. And then in future, you'll be like, oh, I need to talk to someone at the council. Oh, Grace works at the council. It's about our own networking, and then maybe we will never do another unconference again, but some other thing will result that we didn't anticipate. Or we'll get in and behind and support UCE with its impact conference or something. So there's a lot of value there as well.
I have to confess that the idea of an unconference makes me a little bit uncomfortable because I'm quite a structured person, but completely open to it. I think the theme of collaboration is fantastic, but I think the nature of that will be that the unconference, bringing people together, is undoubtedly going to be the start of things.
Yeah.
So at least in my mind, structured mind, thinking about what are we getting out of this, don't be too wedded to the end of the story. No, it's actually the start of things to come. So
yeah, that's a good word. I agree with you. Yeah, and the other thing, this is so obvious, but you throw a stone in the water and the ripples go out, and you don't know until 5 years later or 10 years later. Like maybe if we can set up scholarships for some high school students to attend or something, one of them may get impacted, and then we don't find out for decades that it was this event that really catalyzed my own commitment to whatever they do. So I agree with you. Yeah.
On that kind of note, when you're talking about like pricing and that kind of thing, kind of leaps to mind automatically of like, it'd be cool to have a tiered system of if you've got the means to pay and sponsor someone else to be able to attend, that'd be really cool to then open up spaces to those high school or uni students who otherwise wouldn't have the option, and think of it that way.
Yeah, I agree. yeah, that will be part. So hopefully one of the work streams will be a team that looks into that and the pricing and the money side of things. Yeah. So we might turn to the work streams. So I'll give you a venue update as well. So the way I view my role, just to be clear, is I want to be like a facilitator sort of role. So I won't have the knowledge of the detail of whatever the work streams are going on, but I will be somebody that whoever needs it can come to, and then I'll connect them, or just be a central point, because I think you need someone to step into that role, otherwise it could descend into chaos. So that
I don't think anyone else here is expecting anyone but you to do that, so
yeah. So you're okay with that. But just to be clear, that's how I view my role. So I'll be involved in everything, but I won't necessarily get into the pricing, for example, because I want to, I guess what I'm saying is I want to release this to all of us to run. It's not mine anymore. It's a collective thing. And it would have been simpler for me to just shoulder tap 3 people or 4 people, and probably potentially faster. But that's not why I'm doing this, and that's not the purpose here. Is to go together rather than just do something as a small little committee and then make it available. So just so you know, that's the heart behind it. So the venue update, this is, so it's gonna happen, I have no doubt, because there's already been, I think it's up to 46 different organizations who've sent their logos, and the fact that there's like 16 or 17 of you around the table, shows that there's real interest. So I think, but the question about the venue is gonna be, and this is a good question for all of us, is how many people do we want? And that's more the question to me at the moment, rather than the venue. Christchurch does have a shortage of a massive venue, but there's actually there's a range of other places. So the unconferences I've been to have typically been relatively small. So they've been maybe 70 or 80 or 100 people. So it's not that many people. When you think that this room, there's like almost 20 people, 3 times this, it's not actually that big an event. But the more and more I talk about it, and if I post about it, and there's lots of people who say, I'll be there, I'd love to come. And the fact that there's this many of you interested in helping plan it shows me that each of your networks would be interested. So the question I'm running through in my mind is, the value of a small conference is that you potentially get to know everyone. Like you eat lunch and you talk with 10 people, and then at afternoon tea you meet others. So by making it a little bit bigger, we lose the beauty of really connecting with a lot of people. But at the same time, where I'm going, by having more people, potentially you're having even greater impact in terms of the number of people that are exposed to new thinking or, making networks. So I kind of am thinking, let's just push and see what interest there is, but not limit it, in terms of it might get up to say 300, something like that. That's the sort of number in my head that I've been thinking about. Once you get over that, it starts to get quite a bit bigger. But in my mind, I'm thinking a couple hundred would be doable. So I'm quite keen to hear your feedback as well. Not necessarily right now, but just so you know, that's the logistics of how I've been thinking. So the venue update is, I approached ARA a long time ago, and University of Canterbury, because I felt like they have venue potential. They've got classrooms and amphitheaters and all that. And ARA have a facility called the Kahukura building, and it can take about 200-ish, but apparently it's used on Saturdays for engineering classes. So it looked like we could use it, but then actually no, it's probably not going to be available. So I've just been putting out feelers to all venues that I know of, and I'd be keen for your feedback on the ones I haven't approached. So I've talked with the Air Force Museum, who actually have an amazing facility. I don't know if you've been there for a conference, but it can take up to 700, and then they've got breakout rooms. So it's actually a great facility. It's a little bit pricey, but it's an amazing venue. And then Isaac Theatre Royal. So they actually have a whole bunch of rooms as well as the main Theatre Royal part of it. And then I've been talking, Michelle Sharp at Vodafone, so she just started there recently. She's quite keen to offer their building as potentially a place that could be used. So if you've been in there, you'll know that up above there's a massive room that could take quite a few people. And then the town hall is another option, but it's like the next level, although they do have that smaller parts to it, and they have breakout rooms. And I've got pricing for all of these different options as well. ARA were willing to do it for free, which would have made it a very good price. But all of this inquiring and things has made me think about, there's actually different approaches that you could take. And again, I'm keen for your input here, but one approach would be we go to one venue and we're there the whole time. Oh, the other thing is UCSA. So the UCSA building is just completed and it's really beautiful. Impact Summit was held there in September. It has about 300 people it can take. So in some ways that would be really a nice as a venue. But I've been thinking through, the first option would be we go to one venue and have everything at that one venue. And that's great because everyone's together. But another option potentially would be if ARA said you can't have the 200 people place, but we've got plenty of classrooms, then that's quite near to Vodafone. And what if we found a number of different spots in the central city and kind of had, well, this work streams at Vodafone about technology and this one about communities over at ARA, and try to utilize the space in that way, and then have a central place where everyone would come for the beginning and the end. So those are some of the ideas that I'm thinking through. And if you have an interest, I guess, as the work stream for the venue, then maybe we could talk that through at that level. I don't know, any initial thoughts or comments? That was the venue update, by the way.
So one option is like a conference pub crawl.
A pub crawl, a conference pub crawl,
3 different conference venues. It could
that would be.
It could produce a different ambience as regards what it feels like in 3 different sections. That could be inconvenient. It could be useful.
Yeah.
Could help with that refocusing thing, right? Because you're actually physically moving space, and instead of just going down the rabbit hole, you're actually let's leave that rabbit hole behind and
move on. Yeah.
Interesting concept.
Yeah, well, even the first item I put on the work stream area was the Te Ao Māori input, so like, would there be some sort of a marae or a facility that we could integrate into the day in some way? I think that would be pretty cool, but I don't have the connections to know where it would be, where it might fit.
Last time I was there, which was a while ago, but they have like a Maori Students Association type building with an ARA, and last I heard when I was last there, they had sort of I want to say like a hall or some kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I've been there before. That would be worth looking into as well.
Maybe not for the whole thing, but just for a portion of it. It seemed like it was a event facility potentially.
Yeah, Rahula Marae just recently. That's a really good facility.
Yeah,
Central City, just off, what is it?
Springfield Road.
Yeah, it's a good facility too.
Okay.
I'm sure.
The actual marae itself, and then of course beyond that, so for the substantial dining room area, which can be another public space.
And out the front, the grass area, the gardens.
Grass area.
Nice facility. Facility. I hadn't been before.
Quite available, and I know the chair of the management team there, so I'm happy to ask if.
Have a conversation. Yeah. The other thing is just thinking about the vibe of the conference. Like if you go to a venue that's like an amphitheater, like a structured feel to it, then who's going to get up on the stage to pitch their idea, as opposed to more of a mingling, flat cocktail sort of function room where you're actually, you're just one of the crowd. So there's those sorts of things to think about as well. And in terms of yeah, so if you're interested in the venue, then that will be a work stream to look into and finalize. I think the pricing of some of them is obviously very high, like the town hall, it's like $8,000 or something for the main, the big giant part. But others were less than I thought they were going to be, like, you know, like a couple thousand for hiring for the whole day. Like which one? Isaac Theatre was cheaper than I thought it was going to be, and it's a beautiful venue. So
I'm not sure how feasible that is in practical terms, but even if they're 5,000 or even if they're 2,000, like there is a space, I think, to be like, this is what we're about, this is what we aim to do, bring people together. Like we actually, depending on how the money stuff works and etc. But I think there would be a space to
approach them on that grounds.
And some might be more willing than others, but I think there will be some movement. Hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think the company V-Base is the one that has many of the venues,
right.
But you're right, there might be some that would be more inclined. And the beauty of having so many of us is that there will be networks within these networks where you'll mention it to someone, and then your cousin will say, well, my father's a trustee of this other thing and they've got a venue. And so I'm actually not that worried about the venue. I think it will flow out, and I feel pretty confident that we'll get the right space. But I can't come to you and say, I've booked this place and it's happening at that date. And that's the other reason I haven't set a date, because we need the venue to be free. But
do you have a time of the year that?
Well, I was thinking in May next year. I feel like that's long enough away for us to really plan it well. And I also am really conscious about March 15. And while that may come up in the Unconference, I don't want this to be about just that. So I felt like if it was in, say, March, it might become something that got a little bit captured by that. And February is way too soon, so that leaves,
and April's Easter, right? Which is
April has a break and things.
Yeah.
And May, I felt like it was still not quite the middle of winter. It's still pretty good weather and things. So that was how I came up with that date, or that month to aim for. But I think if it ended up being early June or late April, or looking at school holidays as well.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that in May, if there is another conference that's happening as well, I think in May they have the big T-Tech Week Summit. That's
they do,
going
don't
on.
they? Tech Week.
Yeah, the Tech Week is happening in May.
So whoever is willing and wants to look at dates and venues and things, will have to look at the sporting events and the random holidays and the things that we, if there's things that need to be planned for.
Anyone's used Turnaman? Is this venue too? Is that
very good.
you've used it?
Yep.
That's I think it's quite well priced too, isn't it?
I didn't know the cost, but it's a great place for
Yeah, so Turanga would be great. I've been to TEDx had an event there, a welcome event last year, and it was quite good. I don't know how. Yeah, so part of the thing with an unconference is that you end up breaking into, potentially 5 or 6 or 7 work streams. So you need facility that has like space. Like this room would be perfect if there was 30 people who wanted to talk about an issue or whatever it is. But not all venues, like the Air Force Museum, they've got a massive room, and maybe what you could do is kind of split up into each corner, but then that affects the acoustics, and it's all these considerations that you got to think through. But Air Force Museum, potentially that's like you could easily take 600 or 700 people. I was at Canterbury Tech event there, and it's a massive space, but so that's sort of where it's up to on the venue anyway, so it is what it is. And but I feel pretty confident that something will come out that will be the right space.
Stephen, I was thinking about on the name of the Feast Groundswell in Tauranga, and their startup weekend was held in the building of whatever their electricity company is up there. And they had this big building with big atrium, and they had all of their central stuff in the atrium over the weekend,
Yeah.
and then they used all the meeting rooms and stuff. So
Yeah.
something like that.
Well, I'm pretty sure Vodafone would be willing to let us use their room, a Saturday, no one's going to be in that space.
Yeah.
Somebody else said that Spark was opening up a new building.
Yeah.
But that was you, wasn't it? Yeah, so
Yeah, I've followed up, I haven't responded, I have gotten.
haven't had a
yet.
response back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of like the idea potentially, because I think ARA is willing to come on board. Like if they had a few classrooms or workshops, areas that we could use, and then Vodafone's literally like 400 meters away.
Biz Dojo is right there too.
Biz Dojo's right there, yeah, exactly. At the Social Enterprise World Forum, Biz Dojo was used. They had a meeting room that was used, and yeah. So there would be, that part of the city, I think there's quite a few places, Epic building.
Because it's like the innovation hub, and that's kind
Yeah.
of what this is all about.
Yeah. Yep, the Epic building has a good spot that could be one of the work streams. And so if we did it down that road, and if we could get free facilities, then obviously we don't need to charge as much to people, as opposed to we're gonna hire something for a couple $1,000s and trying to recoup some of the money. So I do like that, if we could go have a Mirai involved in Vodafone and ARA and Epic building and Biz Dojo, it might be that we could just get the venues at no cost and really nice ones. There would be a little bit of walking between the venues, so but I think to a certain extent, if we did label them like this is the community focused area, this is the tech focused area, some people might just say, well, I'm just staying here all day, that's my jam, so I'm gonna stay in this spot. So I kind of jumped over that was the venue update under the preliminary. Just the work streams to run through relatively quickly, because I don't want to keep you all, I really appreciate all your time, so I'm trying not to eat into it. But just the first one I put there is inclusivity, because I think this is really key and important. And I specifically put the Te Ao Māori input and I'm so thankful that you're here, Tari, because I just view this as the secret weapon of New Zealand. If people were able to embrace it and realize it. So if we can model inclusion through having, te reo, and that would be awesome. But equally, there's going to be other inclusivity factors. So I think some of you were there on Tuesday. I interviewed a guy named Jezza Hamilton, who's a tetraplegic. And it was an amazing interview because he was describing the difference between accessibility and inclusivity. And he said, basically, stop talking about accessibility, because that narrows it down to, do you have ramps to get into the building? Talk about inclusivity, and can we include everyone within whatever it is? And it really struck me. So yeah, the point is there's going to be lots of groups, and we kind of touched on before, people who can't afford to come. How can we include them if we can? So if that interests you, then it would be great if there was like a subgroup of us who were really focused on that and asking the hard questions about how we're doing this. The venue kind of talked about, feel free to interrupt or ask any questions as we go. The curating of topics we kind of talked about as well. On the website, I just put up some that I've thought of that I thought were kind of nice little containers of topics. So I think you can go there and have a look. It's like technology and business and community and environment and some basic things that I think everyone can agree would be helpful. And then I put one that was like everything else, the random one. For the food, I'd love to, bearing in mind the inclusivity, where are we going to source and socially procure this? So there's names like Can Do Catering, who employ people with disabilities. That would be pretty cool. Exchange Cafe, who some of you know, that's where I go for the impact lunches. I'd really love to support Pedro with his cafe, because that would be an amazing thing for him if he could cater for a couple hundred people, and he's doing an amazing work supporting that cafe and the arts in Christchurch. So whoever's looking into the food, looking at that. And then again, the venue may have requirements about, well, you need to use our caterers if you come to our facility, so it's complicated. The communications, so I basically did that website that you may have seen using Squarespace. So it's really simple to use, and you drag and drop. But I kind of would love it if some other people were interested in comms who could have the admin passwords, and they could go and put up updates and keep people informed. And I've started an email list through that. But someone else can grab that with both hands, and we can send out updates to the people on the list, and here's where we're going. I'd love for the organization of this to model the fact that we are diverse and we're coming together to do it. Like, I'm recording this in the hope that I can put it up somewhere so that people who couldn't attend can still see what we talked about, rather than it being just a closed shop of, well, it's starting at this time and let's make it accessible. So yeah, some of you will have great skills with websites and social media presence. Like, I actually do believe this could become, so my own vision is that this is the first Impact Unconference, but it's something that if it works here, well, let's run one in Auckland in 2021, and let's go to Dunedin and do one. It's not, this is proving that it works, what we're trying to do. And the other thing with comms is I've been talking with the press. So there's some reporters there who've said, we'd love to cover it, this would be a good story. So it has the potential to, have the impact. And then the money side is just people who are interested in, how much are we going to charge, and how do we arrange for payments to be made? Is it by credit card, and where does the money go? Which account does it go under? Is there an entity who's willing to umbrella us in terms of GST and any other accounting things that, So there will be issues there, but they're all solvable. But somebody needs to look at it and be happy with how the money is flowing in and out. And then, the invitation to Jacinda, why not? So, who should we invite? Who should we let know? Christchurch NZ, City Council, Akina Foundation, lots of these groups have given their logos. And so that's awesome. But, is there someone that we should invite, like the Prime Minister, to open it? Dream big, right? Why not ask? So some people to look into that. That's kind of with the comms. And then there will be things that I've forgotten, but you'll maybe have thought of that we need. But basically, after this, what I'd love to do is reach out to each of you, or actually, it's better if you reach out to me, and if you tell me I'd be interested in this or this or this, and then what we'll try to do is then have the work streams sort of come together. If there's 3 people interested in the venue, then they can run with that. If there's 2 people interested in the finances side, then they can run with that. If there's people interested in comms, then they can run with that. And that was my own thinking of how we would divvy it up. And then again, I would just be the spoke, in the middle that people can circle back to, and I can sort of keep the communication going between us. And like, oh, well, the venue, we've now settled on this and this and this, so that's going to impact on the food and where we're going to get the catering, and so communicating. Yeah. Is there anything else that jumps out that's missing from that work stream?
Stephen, I'm wondering the feedback that you've had so far, they're mostly from people that are in Canterbury or beyond?
I've had mostly from Canterbury people, but I had someone, obviously Jess is joining from Wellington, and then Guy Ryan was quite interested in what it is from Wellington as well. And then someone from Auckland reached out and sent me the logo for their organization, and they said, let us know if we can support you. And then someone from Tauranga also sent the logo, said, I'm not with you physically, but I endorse what you're about. And then, of course, Akina is mainly based in Wellington and Auckland, so they're keen to be involved. Yeah.
I've got a question, and it's to do with the story that goes behind the conference. So I can think of at one extreme end of the continuum is I've got a friend who's a farmer, and every year she goes to a potato growers conference, which is very descriptive. So obviously we're not going in that direction there. But I'm thinking of the story that gets told for people to want to come is really quite important, because so it doesn't have to be prescriptive. It's going to be a climate change conference or whatever.
Yeah.
But what is it that we're expecting for people to do, to learn, to develop from the conference, and how are we able to then tell other people of why you should come? And there's a number of concerns with that, not simply because it needs to be clear, but also we want to look at the demographics of people who come, because I think the notion of it's all collaborative learning and we can learn as we go, for many people that will just be no way I'm going to be involved within that, whereas they may very well be the people who can gain the most benefit. So, sorry, I haven't read your website as regards to the little containers you've got.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I think that it doesn't have to have a theme per se, but it needs to have something so people can read it and go, okay, that's why we're going, and that's why I should go, and that's why I need to encourage other people to go.
Yeah.
Like a thread that connects everyone, even though everyone will be very different. There'll be some kind of thread that connects everyone.
It'd be like this is a conference on collaborative learning. If you come to this conference, we can learn how we can collaborate through diversity and through different ways of being. So we're better able to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess my first reaction to that would be I deliberately put like impact unconference rather than just unconference, because I think impact is a great word to give some context, and then collaboration being another theme. So in my mind, the themes of impact and collaboration are both what's going to be driving it.
Well, on a personal level, I struggle with the word impact. I use social enterprise, and to me, impact. I know it's the buzzword that we're meant to use, but to me, it could be like impact investment as regards what we can do to get more gas and oil out of the ground.
Yeah.
It hasn't got anything to it that actually tells me what the values of
yeah. Well, I would welcome your input. You know, if you wanted to be involved in helping to craft the story that we could then tell. Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, I actually am moving away from using the term social enterprise, which is interesting because I wrote that book called Social Enterprise in New Zealand. But I view it now as a term that sometimes gets too much as a they do that over there, and I want to move all people on the spectrum. So
I've heard you say that before, and I agree. I mean, that's a good thing, but I just think...
Yeah, and that's why I didn't call this a social enterprise unconference as well, because I don't want it to just be too limited, and I do want the people, I want someone from Fonterra to come, you know? I want it to be open. So that's the danger of telling the story too much, is that it limits it again. Yeah, but happy to engage further, and if there's others who have thoughts, and there's so many amazing comms people around this table, you know, I'm sure that we could come up with a great story. I have to say, it's so far, when I talk about it, it's been resonating with people, and people are definitely sharing it, and I get lots of messages from people saying, I love it, gonna be there, you know. So I actually don't think it's going to be hard to sell this. Like the problem is going to be we're going to make the tickets available, in my view, and they're just going to be gone really quick because collectively our networks are quite vast, I think.
I think there is a point too, because a lot of people want to impact, and a lot of people want to collaborate, and a lot of people want to get beyond the barriers, but I think we also want to reach the people who don't really care that much, or like people that need to go beyond the barriers and stuff. So it's kind of like, how do we get those people that won't be really excited at the start to actually, because we need them there. So I guess there is a point in terms of how do we get the unlikely people to attend.
Yeah, it's a great point.
You have to spark their curiosity, but it's almost like the elitism of those words. I mean, you get a certain crowd potentially that you may get everywhere, and so you want to open that up and be inclusive and get some other people that are on the fringe that kind of want to look into that gap but are a bit scared because people seem to have it pretty much nailed.
Yeah.
And it's those people that I think they're the really interesting people and possibly the ones that will make the most impact ultimately.
Yeah.
Because they'll be the ones that are really going to walk away thinking differently.
Yeah.
So is the idea that it's a kind of an introduction to, it's something for people who for this might be new, it's kind of a opening up and a reaching out and getting new people into it, or is it something for people who maybe have been working in this space a long time and want to, you know, sort of upskill or sort of level up what they're already doing with each other? Maybe that's just the way I think, but I kind of see those as slightly different conversations. The conversation I might have with someone who doesn't really know what impact or social enterprise is very different to someone that I might have as, you know, somebody that's been doing it a while. I'm just wondering, is there a particular thought on that, what kind of audience this might be? I don't mind, but it's an interesting just to so I get my head around it.
No, I agree. It's a great question, and I turn it over to all of us to think about it, because I think
because then the message, right? So the message we'd give to someone who we want to come for the first time would be quite different to the message that we might go for someone else, and you want to sort of do what you say on the box. I don't know if anyone's ever been to an event and they thought it was going to be for this kind of a person, and it actually turned out to be that kind of a person. And you always learn things, but I don't know.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah. I mean, I think these are great questions, and this is an example of where we can further refine. We're not going to do that today, but this is awesome because this is what we have to think through and come up with the story of who we want there. I mean, I would rather not know lots of the people who come. You know, I'd rather that it is some new people who've never engaged on thinking about this stuff.
Is the Unconference ones that you've been to, is that like a model that you're thinking that this one would be modelled on?
It is modelled on ones I've been to, but equally it's taking the best bits of those ones. So for example, it's not a 3-day conference where you get there on a Friday morning and you leave on the Sunday afternoon. You know, it's a short, sweet, relatively easy to organize event.
So do you know what, in terms of the kind of concept behind it, what attracted you and what attracted other people to be participants in that? What was the hook that got them on board? So trying to figure out your thing too.
Yeah, well for me part of it was the initial sort of what's an unconference? I'm intrigued to know more. So that is part of the story maybe. Yeah.
I think increasingly conferences aren't conferences. People go and sit, listen and go home again. They may talk in the breaks, but they don't really ever confer.
Yeah.
I think we've abused the word actually conference.
Yeah.
I go to them and think, well, this is not a conference. This is just a gathering of people who sit and listen.
Yeah.
Well, some conferences, but conferences can be like that. It can be like a professional development. You're going to hear the latest research on neurons or something, you know, and it is kind of a one-way thing because you're there just to get the latest research or, you know, but then there's the other kind that maybe this is more about is the social networks, and so it's just what you want, whether you're just there to blast out a bunch of information, which sometimes you need, or whether it's a place to bring together.
Yeah, I view it more as the networking and the connecting and the what comes afterwards rather than what the conference is. Because honestly, if you ask somebody to, like if they get up and pitch their idea, they're usually going to be pretty good about it, but they won't have slides, they won't have thought in depth about it, and oftentimes it becomes a, here's my 5-minute thoughts, what do you guys think around the room, which is fine, but it's not like the content necessarily is, you know, world class deliberately because we didn't know they were talking until, you know, 10 hours ago. So the focus for me anyway is more about the relationships and the networks and the building up of that.
When I think about who I would want to be there, given that anybody could be speaking on any fairly broad topic, I tend to think about people who are highly capable at coming up with good ideas and delivering them, rather than people who I want to learn about stuff You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People who are able to offer knowledge rather than people who are thirsty for knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we want to have a mixture of both, but I think the most valuable people will be the ones who have demonstrated capability of actually doing stuff.
That's right.
Well, this is where
because you're going to have the other people that are going to listen to that and go, we can do this too. So they wouldn't have that knowledge. They're going to listen to that and go, oh my gosh, why aren't we doing that? And who in this room could we be doing that with?
Yeah.
So you have to have
to
everybody.
balance
don't
things.
you?
Yeah.
I got an initial list of eight people that just sitting down here hearing about it, running down names. I've got to invite that person.
Right.
Because you want to hear from you want to hear their experiences,
I
and you
think
want to hear
anybody
their
who
knowledge.
comes would want to hear from those people. Yeah.
That makes sense. I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
I think one interesting dynamic is within the need for organisational learning. We could identify some key people who have got a lot to say, but one of the things I'm interested in is regards how you can release and empower people within the organisation who can do it themselves. So that's why I think an unconference could be really valuable. So there might be 100 people who come, and 10 would normally get the opportunity to speak, but what about the rest, the other people? If this releases them to be able to talk about things that are important, which resonates with other people, then that could be a very valuable collaborative learning experience for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, when one more thing, when I think of the word unconference, which is interesting, and you mentioned social networking. So, if unconference comes first, that could be a barrier, or that could be a door to go through. But if it was something like this is a conference on social networking, an unconference learning experience, then I can see how it could be framed in a way that people would be more easily able to relate to.
Sure.
Does that negate from the whole concept of unconference by putting it second?
No, I think it's fine. Yeah, the beauty of it is that there's no template here that we copy and paste from.
Yeah.
An idea. Yeah, feel free to. We're about to finish, but feel free to go if you need to.
Be in touch.
Yeah, thank you. One other comment though, because there are no rules, like we are making this up, that gives us huge flexibility. So if you've got some names there, then there's no rule saying we can't pre-prepare at least some speakers so that we do know that there's some really top class people talking on a topic. And I've been thinking about this actually, that the night before you could even have like some lightning talks from some well-respected people within, social housing or whatever, talking about something. And so one idea is that we could actually approach some people that we all agree would be, world-class, PhD in their field, and have an unconference, but actually have maybe one or two things already pre-programmed. And that could help attract more people to come as well, because it's like, well, we have, the world leading expert on the colonization of Mars or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So
because I think the strength of an unconference is its flexibility.
Yeah.
But it also, I think that brings out my greatest fear.
That's
that
the
we
weakness.
we
People
invite
like
people.
reliability and predictability to a certain point.
Yeah, which is why my list of 8 people, I know what I'm going to get from them. They're going to give some value, and they're going to be that they have leadership qualities that, if put on the spot, they'll deliver. Because my fear is, we've invited a bunch of people and nobody really knows what to expect, and especially if they're New Zealanders,
shrinking
nobody
back.
wants to really step up and take a lead. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, we're okay around this room, but
Well,
that's my fear.
Yeah.
Is that, or this actually didn't really go anywhere because the caliber of people that we invited.
So
It became a bit of a sort of a circular process where no one was quite sure, so no one was quite sure. So
Yeah. So whoever's involved in the curating of topics sort of work stream, I think this would be something for those people to think about and net out, and then come back and report to the wider group. And I'm happy to be involved or give feedback, but I'm also happy for that group to sort of run with it. And one idea would be we actually put out a call for submissions of ideas in advance, and don't leave it all to the night before. Actually get a couple things in that we know are going to be really amazing.
Have you people have been to the New Frontiers conferences up in the North Island? Oh, so they kind of have they have pre-arranged sessions and speakers of a quite a wide variety, but then they also have like what sounds to breakout spaces that are only decided on the topic within sort of 6 to 12 hours out, so they know that. So you have a choice of going to something that's come up really organically, or something to go to something that's pre-arranged that you have on a schedule. So it's kind of like the best of both.
Mm.
There's an opportunity for stuff to be really flexible and pop up with who's there and who wants to speak, but then there's also opportunities for particular invited guests, and that, I don't know, I've been to a couple of those, and that's a nice combination. And you can choose, maybe in the afternoon you do something of a speaker, but in the morning you're part of this really organic workshop.
Yeah, it would be an option.
That's a good mix. I mean, the word workshop was coming to me. I can think of my wife some years ago trained as a consult psychotherapist, and I've been to some of her workshops. They are challenging, and there is an expectation that you participate. So if we want people to be entertained, that's one kind of conference, but if we want people to go through a learning experience, it's really important that we can facilitate a level of participation that will enable them and the people around them to change.
Well, one of the things New Frontiers does is that they rank it from level of participation that you can expect. So this one is a workshop where there's going to be pens and paper, and then this one is a presentation on this person's idea, and then this one's so that you can pick what you feel comfortable with, whether you're someone that wants to come and get expert knowledge, or whether you want to be really part of this and so you know going in what stuff you're. So you could, and so I guess as organisers, you could choose. Okay, well, we'd actually like to have a variety of things going on, so that the sitting and listening people are taken, have their needs met, and then the getting down to business, all in it together people, and so you.
Yeah. So this is all good brainstorming, but the challenge is one of the beauties of an unconference is it's relatively simple to organize, because you haven't had to contact people, and you don't have the last minute pullouts, and you don't, so now we're going, back more towards the conference style, which then, if we wanted to have elements of the conference within the unconference, that's okay, that can work if we agree that that's appropriate, but equally it creates more work for whoever then has to contact the people and arrange, and then you have to think through, well, we really want this amazing person from Wellington, are we going to pay for them to fly down, and where are they going to stay? And it's an extra level of complexity. So that's the other side. It's like everything in life, there's always pluses and minuses. So
one way of joining those two together is have them as a series of templates. So you still have it as a true unconference, and you say, okay, I want to run X, Y, Z. Will I do it as a workshop? Will I do it as a presentation? Will I do it as something else? And so that would still work within that conference. I quite like those choices.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of remembering not to overcomplicate.
Yeah, well, that's the end of the day. All of us, I'm sure if I asked you how you're doing, you'd all say that you're busy, right? So how do we fit this into already busy lives? And I'm really keen that we don't overcomplicate it, overdo it. Like, I actually just want it to be a fairly simple structure. But if we each put time into it, then it will work.
I think it's it's almost like a leap of faith to come, because if I was to reach out to my 8 people and tell them to come, they'd come because they trust me.
Sure.
Right? And it's almost like for me to come, well, I'll come because I trust you. I've had previous exchanges with you. I know some people who are going to be there. I know it's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
But a cold call, come to this, or there's no certainty. I don't know what I'm going to. I don't know who's going to be there. I don't know what I'm going to get out of it.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a leap of faith.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It is, but that's where it would be the networks.
That's right.
Yeah, that would be the networks of people trust. They trust that
trust.
I'm involved, so they're going to come, or you're involved, so they're going to come. I forgot.
And it's kind of part of unlocking and going with an open mind. This is then you don't have that preconceived idea of I'm going to get this out of it, and it means you're actually open to whatever you get out of it.
Right. But just on that, I think there's an element of it. Everyone here has a level of knowledge around impact, social enterprise, unconference. But if you're going to then say to somebody else, you have to almost prime them for how to come and be present as they come into that room, because it's quite unusual. I'm just thinking in the NGO space and the learning that it's taken for people to come in, and it's not that they don't want to, but they're fearful of stepping into space that seems really unfamiliar. So the more that you can say, you need to come with an open mind, come with some questions. you know, be curious and prime the space, the easier it is to step into it.
It's like a
Well,
pyramid
there's an
scheme,
element
eh?
of that.
It's like
I
a pyramid
agree.
scheme.
Yeah.
The guy at the top,
Yeah.
everyone trusts
Yeah.
him, and then it goes to them, and then
Yeah.
you trust them.
It's all right, really.
Don't you let me down, because
Yeah.
I'll
Wow,
let them down.
festival.
Yeah.
But that potentially could be another work stream, is people thinking about the preparation for the people who are coming the first time.
How will it feel
Yeah.
for them?
Yeah. So what I might do to close off is send an email afterwards summarizing different work streams. And then if you're interested in one of them, then just come back to me. We're not going to meet again pre-Christmas or anything, but maybe late January to try to start having people allocated. Or if you already know something you want to help out with, then we can go ahead and probably have little sub-email groups of people, and then I won't need to be at all the meetings, but some, you know, there'll be a storyboarding one, and there'll be a food one, and a whatever.
Would it be worth getting on a platform like Slack or something so that we can
We
have
could do
those
that, yeah.
conversations in
A Slack one,
in
yeah.
it rather than lots of email chains?
Yeah.
I have the same question. Yeah.
Yep. Does everyone use
Yeah.
Slack, or could we could use it?
If we
Some
pick-
people don't, so
If we pick the one that's most used,
Yeah.
then others could.
you can easily download it. So it's just an app.
Yeah, Slack is pretty
sign
cool.
up,
Yeah.
yeah.
It would be a learning experience. Thanks for coming, Joe. So maybe we should do that?
Yeah.
Slack?
Yeah.
Okay, we can set up a Slack group. I know someone named Charlotte who wants to help me set one up.
U-C-L-O-C-K.
Yeah.
U-C-L-O-C-K.
Yeah, and then we could have, like, each of the
Each
groups,
one, and then you
yeah,
just jump into the ones
whichever
that
one you
are-
wanted to
Yeah.
contribute to.
When do you think work stream's going to be the one that people